Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you can all hear me. Thanks for joining Orangutech here for the first of our spring seminars. We're lucky to have Nintex with us today for a return to office scenario. We're going to be going through a case study for leveraging business automation with Nintex Workflow Cloud using Nintex Forms, Workflow, and DocGen. So we're going to be using Nintex to work through a future scenario that we may be facing in the fall. I know that we just entered what feels like our, umpteenth lockdown, and return to office may be so far in the future and may seem so far off, but it might be a reality that we're facing in the fall. And so we wanted to at least potentially go through a scenario like that and present a possible solution as we're entering something that we've never really dealt with before. So agenda, we're going to do just a quick overview of Orangutech. We're going to do an introduction to the speakers along with Nintex, and then we're going to do a quick Nintex Workflow Cloud overview and a quick overview of Nintex in the public sector, and then we're going to dive headlong right into the use case. So a little bit about myself. My name is Hein. I'm the Director of Partnerships and Marketing here with Orangutech. With me, I have Jesse McHargue, Technical Evangelist with Nintex, and Steve Witt, Director of Public Sector with Nintex. A little bit about Orangutech is we are focused on increasing user adoption of Microsoft solutions. We've been in business for 18 years, seen our business grown exponentially and really seen it shift from Sharepoint consulting to software sales. And a big piece of that is the business that we do with Nintex. We're happy to be a partner of theirs, and that's just a software solution that we provide. We also provide big custom solutions like EDRMS and Microsoft 365 Protected B, and we have a variety of services, roadmaps, implementations, change management, information management as well. So we're really focusing on that Microsoft stack. We are experts in the federal government. About 95% of our business is FedGov in the public sector. We feel we are thought leaders in the move to the Microsoft 365 cloud, and we are experts at navigating the procurement process within federal government of Canada. We are a value-focused organization. We are focused on bringing value to our clients and to our departments. In that realm, we are a Microsoft Gold certified partner. We are certified Gold in application development, in collaboration and content, and we are Silver in cloud productivity. We are so close to getting Gold. We will probably be Gold in cloud productivity in the next couple weeks. We are also a Nintex Premier Partner, and we are the winner of the 2020 Nintex Partner Award for Business Acceleration in America. And so on that note, I'd like to toss it over to Steve to tell you a little bit more about the Nintex platform.
Awesome. Thanks, Eric. I appreciate it. Again, my name is Steve Witt. I look after public sector for Nintex. If you're not familiar with Nintex, here's a quick overview. We were founded way back when in 2006 in Melbourne, Australia, started life as the preeminent workflow and forms add-on for Microsoft SharePoint. So as MOS SharePoint 2007 was coming out, so was Nintex as a software company. Since then, we've grown to be basically the be-all, end-all when it comes to process management and automation. Matter of fact, our mission is to improve the way people work through process management and automation. To that end, we are the largest privately held process automation company around today. About 800 employees worldwide. Oh, you can keep going then. That's fine.
Sorry.
No, that's okay. The big thing with Nintex is, we bring process automation to the masses. We have about 10,000 customers globally today. We're used in 90 different countries, and our go-to-market is with partners much like Orangutech, who is our go-to partner in the federal government there in Canada. Now I can go. So if we look at what government agencies do and organizations as a whole do when it comes to digital transformation, McKinsey report says about 68% of all processes in an organization remain highly manual. And this is after a lot of effort and resources and time and money have been spent on technology tools and initiatives still only about 32% in any given organization have been automated. And you can really look at that for 3 different reasons, right? One is the technology used is often hard to implement, complex. You're using it for complex use cases, and it takes a lot of time. And these are typically like IT-owned technologies that we're working on, I'll say really big processes, and the development time is counted in the months or years, right? So you spend a lot of time and money on those, and you can't take that technology and roll it out to the masses. Another reason why processes remain highly manual is organizations don't understand where all the processes are. They're not just the dozen or so that you automate with the the developer tools there on the left. There's hundreds, if not thousands, of processes in any government organization, and they don't know where they are. They don't have a tool to kind of manage and map and collaborate on all the processes and inventory those processes. And the last reason is, the tools that are made available to the average user like myself, they're not powerful enough to do much more than very, very simple processes, right? Like maybe send an email and things like that. So when you look at those 3 things, those are the challenges that organizations have and why they never get past that 32% range, right? They need a technology platform that's able to go wide within an organization and be used by everyone. You can go to the next slide. Right, and that's where the Nintex Process Platform comes in, right? So if you look at all the different technologies you have in any given organization, whether it be CRM or case management, you have all of the file sync and share. You've got the Microsoft Office 365 M365 platform. You have other platforms like Salesforce. You have all these different systems, right? You have data and processes that touch them all. So if you look at what Nintex does, at its core, we're looking at 3 areas, right? The first is, if you go ahead and hit the animation there, is what we call Nintex ProMap. This is our product that allows you to take those processes that live throughout the organization and map and manage them easily, right? It's I'll say platform agnostic tool that you can use for any process. It can be a manual process, it can be a process that lives in a legacy homegrown system, or it can be a process that touches all the other systems you see on the screen today. So when we start with that, it gives you a great foundation to then go into automation, which is what we're going to talk about today, right? And automation is where Nintex started, so we're going to start and talk about forms and workflow automation, how we can build those types of forms easily without any code. We can orchestrate a workflow without any code. We can build documents and send things for e-signature, again, without any code. And then ultimately, robotic process automation. We're not going to get deep into RPA today, but know that we have that as well. And then as you round out the Nintex platform, and you want to touch all these different systems, we have what we call the extensions framework, which allows easy integration with first-party integration that we provide. So that would be for all your Microsoft products. But if there's very specific products that we don't support, you can extend that in the Nintex Workflow Cloud platform by building your own extensions. And then the last piece of this is also, if it's worth automating, it's worth defining, it's also worth optimizing as well. And that's where you get the analytics, so you can see where your workflows are, where they're running, and how they're performing. So if you look at that, what kind of processes we solve for? And again, with Nintex, you're typically counting these in the hundreds, if not thousands. In public sector, there are everything like government administration with things like working with vendor management within an organization, right? Where you're working on, letting people get into your built facility or just setting them up as a vendor. You work in emergency services and public works. When you work in the Department of Defense, there's things in there like budget management and stuff like that we handle. Eric, if you go ahead and hit the slide, it'll move to the right a little bit. We'll talk about the rest that we do. And then ultimately, when you look at, we have these vertical processes that are unique to public sector, the challenges that public sector faces. We also have those horizontal processes like human resources or legal or purchasing or finance and accounting. And those are not, unique to public sector. They're the same challenges that we have throughout any organization, a big one being like something like an employee onboarding. So if we look at where Nintex is used throughout the federal government in Canada, here's a list of some customers, and I'll talk about 2 quick examples. Library and Archives Canada, a customer of Orangutech and Nintex, uses us for a lot of different processes. Everything from tracking of basically that going to that employee onboarding and the entire life cycle of bringing on a new hire. And then IDRC also uses Nintex for like travel requests and travel planning. So taking processes that were before very manual processes, maybe paper-driven, being able to build out a form, orchestrate a workflow, and get it so it's much more efficient is something that we do very well. Okay, so let's talk one last slide here. What we're doing in and around the government of Canada in addressing the kind of the requirements of what we have in Canada from data residency and data sovereignty. So earlier this year, we announced that the Nintex Workflow Cloud that you're going to see today is going to be the next product that we add. So our process management and mapping software is already available for Canadian customers today, and we'll be adding the Nintex Workflow Cloud to that data center, and it's targeted for the summer timeframe. So along that end is we've got programs set up for customers that maybe be using some legacy technology, SharePoint Designer, InfoPath. We've got some great licensing programs getting ready for that data center. So if you're a new customer, reach out to Orangutech. We've got some packages to get you up and running quickly. And if you're an existing customer, we've got some great programs too as you make that journey to the cloud, moving your SharePoint content to O365, M365. You can take your Nintex workflows with you as well. And we've got a workflow match and customer loyalty program pricing as well. So with that covers our overview of Nintex. I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Jesse to kind of get into the technology of the Nintex Workflow Cloud.
All right. So let's go ahead and share the right screen. All right. And all of my team stuff went away. There it is. All right. Okay. So if I can just get like a head nod from one of you guys, you guys able to see my screen coming through in that live preview? Perfect. Excellent. Excellent. All right. So what we're going to talk about then is, right, Nintex Workflow Cloud and kind of do a quick walkthrough of what the tool is, what it can do, and what it has to offer. And we're going to kind of frame this around kind of that use case that we talked about earlier, where the return to work. And the reason that I think that one's specifically really important, to frame it around is, a lot of us came into 2021 with probably a much brighter outlook than what we experienced in 2020, right? With everything that was going on in the world, I think a lot of organizations were hoping to be back to somewhat of a normality, probably at the beginning of the summer of 2020. But here we are going into the summer of 2021, and we're still trying to figure out how we're doing business. So the real kind of the bottom line is business changes, right? The way that we do business has to evolve over time. Sometimes it's slow. Sometimes it has to be at a moment's notice when something like a pandemic hits us and we all have to figure out how do we continue to do what we do day in and day out and still hit the levels that we are expected to hit, right? Still be able to do all those great things day in and day out. So we're going to take a look at what Nintex Workflow Cloud can do from that kind of return to work scenario where, hey, I want to get my employees back into the office. I want them to be back to some place where they can collaborate and be productive and really focus in on doing all of those things, right, to do business and continue business as usual. So that's how we're going to frame this. So I think first and foremost, what I want to do, though, is I want to just kind of walk through what Nintex Workflow Cloud is as a whole, right? So like Steve mentioned, right, it is hosted in Microsoft Azure, so it is cloud-based, obviously, with Nintex Workflow Cloud. We spin up a tenant, we hand it over to you, and it's yours and yours alone, right? So you can leverage a single sign-on for user management. This allows you to manage your user just through, Azure AD if you wanted to, or you can connect any other federated identity services if you wanted to. So from there, right, just kind of take a look at this dashboard. When you come in, this is a list of all your workflows. For many of you that may be familiar with Nintex, again, like Steve talked about, kind of where we got our start, really kind of honed in on that SharePoint side of things. This is a departure from that. So Nintex Workflow Cloud is not tethered to SharePoint Online or even SharePoint On-Prem. And that's okay, right? Because we here at Nintex, we realize that eventually you're probably going to run into a process where it doesn't, start, live, or even die inside of SharePoint or that ecosystem. So you're going to want to be able to build out automation somewhere else. So that's really where Nintex Workflow Cloud strives from. So what we can do is we can come in here and we can build out data connections. So this way here, Nintex Workflow Cloud can really sit in the middle of all your different platforms and start, managing that process between all of your different assets that you have in place. So let's say you have a workflow that starts from something in Salesforce, or it needs to talk to Dynamic CRM, or the data eventually does have to get into SharePoint Online. You can do that all with one single tool, rather than having to use maybe some of the workflow assets that are in each of those tools, or using other integrations from a variety of other applications. Nintex Workflow Cloud really helps just streamline your entire process, because again, that's what we focus in on. That's what we focus in on, is just streamlining that process. So to create a connection, real simple, right? I would just come in here, click on Add New, pick my connector, right? Maybe it's SharePoint, maybe it's Google, Teams, if I wanted to send things through Teams, right? Have that be my single pane of glass. Absolutely, you can go ahead and do that, right? It's really that simple. So we would make that selection, then just go through here and then actually come in and sign into it. I want to focus on SharePoint Online here real quick, just so everybody kind of understands that. So when you make a connection to SharePoint Online, you get to define that scope of what you're actually interacting with. Again, for a lot of us that have, kind of grew up, so to speak, inside of SharePoint and building out workflows with Nintex, we've become so accustomed to just building workflows on that list or library settings, right, on those objects. So now when you build out a workflow, it's not sitting on top of that. So you have to define, when you're making that connection, where does it actually need to go to? What sort of authorization am I looking for? Am I building towards? So that's how we can layer some security on there, right? I make my connection, provide my tenant URL, and I'm off to the races. On top of that, speaking of security, we can then also layer more permissions on top of that. So again, I talked about how you can have single sign-on, you can manage your users that way. So you can actually apply permissions to those connections. So meaning, who has the ability from a workflow design standpoint to actually build with that set of credentials, that connection, right? To be able to go off and do those things. So really kind of taking that security and taking the idea of who can use what and when really kind of helps you streamline your process and really put up the guardrails where it need be. And the last thing I'll talk about here before we actually jump into the designer and kind of talk about this workflow and this process is our extensions framework, right? Again, being outside of SharePoint, we have a lot of different connectors that are out of the box, but by all means, there's no way that we can have all of them. There's a lot of platforms out there today. There's a lot of systems that are out there today. There's going to be more tomorrow. So the idea is, well, we want to give you the tools to be successful to build out your own custom workflow actions inside of Nintex Workflow Cloud. So through our extensions framework, you can build out your own custom workflow actions. It's just through an open API specification, just building out a JSON file, run the API definition, plug it into your Nintex Workflow Cloud environment, and you're off to the races. Now you have your own custom built workflow actions that you can use in your workflows today and be able to reuse those over and over again. There's a ton of help documentation out there. I'm not going to spend too much time going over that because that's a whole nother conversation. But I would certainly recommend that if you are interested in that, you want to know more about that, reach out to the folks at Orangutech. Happy to have a conversation about those kind of things. And it really expands out the capabilities of Nintex Workflow Cloud for everything that we don't have out of the box as of right now. All right. So with that in mind, what I am going to do is I'm actually just going to open up a blank canvas. So I'm just going to hit that create workflow button. I'm just going to open up a blank one before we jump into the use case. And the reason why is because a lot of the times this is where we start, right? If we think back to what Steve had talked about and kind of where what he showed, like that slide with all the circles that are on there, right? And we have all those other platforms, and we kind of start with that mapping and management. Right, that's the perfect world, right? We all want to start there. We all want to start and sit down and whiteboard this out and things like that. But if you're anything like me, you probably just jump right into the designer, right? You just jump right into the canvas and say, I want to start building, right? I'm a developer. I'm just going to start grabbing my things because I know what I'm doing. And by all means, you can do that, right? It's very easy to come in here and say, well, I know I need to send an email, so I'm going to drag that onto the canvas, and eventually I'm gonna talk to SharePoint online, so I'm going to need to maybe query a list and get that data, and so on and so forth, right? There's a ton of actions that we have over here on that left-hand side. But I certainly would beg for everybody is to really sit down and think about what your process is, because there are so many things that you can build. I've spent a lot of time and effort going back and fixing my mistakes. So again, being able to sit down and mapping out what you do is a great benefit. Because when you get into the workflow designer, it certainly does help to understand what you're trying to do, because you see how easy it is just to start building with things. Taking a look at the start event for Nintex Workflow Cloud, again, this is a bit of a departure from what many of us are used to inside of SharePoint. So we're probably used to the SharePoint on item new or on item modification, right? Kind of the classic way to start a workflow inside of SharePoint. And we have those too, right? Inside of SharePoint, you can still do that by all means. That doesn't have to change. But what we do offer though is other things, right? Because again, we realize that not every workflow or every process is going to start and end inside of SharePoint. So, we have the traditional form. I'm going to get to that here in a minute. But of course, scheduled start, I have some sort of cadence. It's got to run every week, every month, whatever that may be. We also have a component workflow, which is really just a HTTP web call, right? The idea to be able to call an endpoint to start my workflow. Now, why is that important? You think about any other application that you have today, whether it's out of the box or off the shelf or homegrown application that can make a call out. You can now use Nintex Workflow Cloud as your workflow engine for that application, for that platform, right? So now any sort of application can use Nintex Workflow Cloud and just be that start event. It's amazing to be able to do that. We also have a lot of other things out there. So, we're partnered with Adobe. So for Nintex Sign powered by Adobe Sign, those signature events, OneDrive, Salesforce, SharePoint, Dynamics, Zendesk, if you're using that for help desk stuff. So there's a lot of things that you can do to start. I'm going to talk about the form and really start looking at that. Because I think a lot of us probably build forms. That's our kind of our way to get data entry into our systems, maybe into SharePoint. But that's really kind of the start event for a lot of our processes. So I'm going to start there. Where I want to go right now, though, is let's take a look at that return to work form. Let's actually take a look at what it looks like when it's all said and done, right? What does this look like finished up? So I'm going to go ahead and fill this out. I'm not going to spend too much time filling this out because we've probably all filled out a form or two in our lifetime, and that's okay. We see some things start to pre-populate. Just drop down my work location, what building am I coming back to. I'm going to return to work on the first Monday in May. Perfect. I don't have any symptoms. I'm relatively healthy. I'm good to go. More notes can go here, right? Just so we can put something in there. And the reason I want to do that is we'll call back out to that later. But you can see filling out a form is nothing difficult, right? It's nothing complex. But what I will show here is our responsive forms. So this is a single form. I'm showing it on my computer, on my PC. So I have a widescreen monitor. But what I can do, though, is imagine, if you will, this is now on a mobile device. Right now, I have one single form that I can take across any of my devices, whether it's a laptop, tablet, PC, my phone, whatever that may be. And you can imagine sitting here having to scroll through this and being able to fill this out on a mobile device. I don't have to redesign anything to go from PC into my mobile settings. It's just done inside of the Forms Designer. So I'm going to go ahead and hit submit. So this way here we can get that going and off to the races. So what did it actually take to build that, right? How did we actually go from that blank canvas that I was showing you into our actual process? So let's take a look at that now. So here's my return to work workflow that I have. I filled out that form. Let me open up the designer here real quick. And here's our design, right? Just like we saw on the form that I just filled out. Here's all of my controls. Here's all of my actions that I have, right? You see over, just like over on the left-hand side, like on the workflow side, all of those form controls are over there as well. We just drag and drop them onto there. So let's say for whatever reason, maybe I want to put a logo on here, right? I want to put my company logo. You can do that, just drag it on there. And then all I'm doing, where does the logo come from? What's the URL? Maybe you have a CDN that has all of your marketing material on there. Great, we'll just grab it from there. Maybe I want to do repeating sections, right? Maybe I want to take this employee information and have it as a repeating section, right? Because maybe I'm the manager, I'm going to fill this out on the behalf of my employees. I could do that, right? Real simple. Add in my questions and I'm good to go. Maybe I'm happy with that and I'm just going to hit my preview tab. There's all that stuff. Now I'm looking at things in preview, everything ready to go, right? So we have all of that. Nice thing is too, is what I'm doing here is I'm actually not having to code anything, right? So when I drag my controls onto the canvas for employee name, I'm not actually having to code anything, right? I'm not gonna have to look for tags in my HTML5 code or anything like that. And responsive forms, like we talked about, I don't have to do anything above and beyond other than just design the form, right? Focusing on what's important to you in your process, and that's capturing the right data. That's really the most important thing. If I wanted to add more pages, I can do that very easily. Come in here, add pages. Maybe I want them to be across the top. And I need them to step through them sequentially, meaning that they can't go on to page 2 until page 1 is completed. I could do that, or I could do it any other way. So adding controls onto the form, very easy, very straightforward, right? But what would a form be without some sort of stylization? We could do that, right? So that company logos, the look and feel, those colors. But also too, what about business logic? Maybe I wanted to add in a new rule about setting some behavior on my form. So, if somebody were to fill out something, right? Let's say, the first name, let's find that. So come in here, just start type that in. Oh, actually, I think I just have it as name. Yep, employee name, right? So if employee name is empty, then employee name, right, is required. We could do that. Or we could set the value of it, right? We could do a data lookup if need be, right? We talk about, right, that data lookup. We could plug it into Azure Active Directory, do a lookup on that employee name, pull back that manager results, things like that. Be able to go off and do that. So for those that are using Nintex for SharePoint on-prem or even online, this is a bit of a departure also too from the way that we've handled rules before. So the way that we used to do the rules is very syntax heavy. To be able to have all that stuff in place and your parentheses and your quotes and all that stuff. And we talked to a lot of customers, and this is just a much easier approach. Same concepts, it's just we are just now drop-down driven, right? So very, very easy to approach. It's a if this, then that, right? So if control does something, then something else happens, right? Simplistic enough, but powerful still for all those business logic that you need to do. And then, right, sometimes you need to go a little bit further, right? Sometimes you need to do a little bit more. Well, this is where our inline functions come into play. Maybe I need to convert some text into a string. Maybe I need to format that properly. Maybe I need to grab a count of how many things I have in my repeating section. Maybe I need to take a repeating section and actually add up all the rows that are in there and get a grand total. Or you think kind of like those line items in like in an expense report, something like that. You can do those things, right? This one here, I really love because I've actually used it before, just kind of being on the customer side of things before joining the Nintex team. But the query string parameter, to be able to pass data through the URL into the form, super cool. And we see it all the time. If you think about any sort of link where you click on it and it has kind of all that campaign information at the back end of it, well, that's just all data that's feeding into a system, right? Just to understand, when did you click on it? Where did you open it from? Things like that. You can kind of do the same thing with Nintex forms. You can just take that data, start parsing that out and doing something with it inside of your form. So really cool things that you can go above and beyond than just some simple if this then that rules. So that's the forms designer right there real quick. Let me just go ahead and make sure that I don't save anything. But now that I've saved my form, I submitted it. First things first is I'm going to format the date. Again, for those that have used SharePoint in the past, you know that date timestamps are becoming a wonderful formatting. They're not really human readable. Maybe for us as developers they are, but the normal person, not so much. So just real quick, first thing I'm going to do is just we're just going to massage that data. I'm just going to make it into a format that's a little bit easier to read. And then from there, I'm going to assign off a task to my manager. Because again, I'm returning off to work, but as a manager, I want to review that. I want to be able to say, hey, well, what about maybe not coming back all at the same time? Maybe I want to stagger their return dates. Maybe I know that they're going, under some sort of medical leave, things like that. I can go ahead and I have that ability to get ahead of it and be able to do a task. Now with tasks, again, over here, right, we have multiple task actions. If it's just a task to a single user or multiple users, we can differentiate those, right? So a group, right, we get a consensus. Again, we're just dragging and dropping that onto the canvas and then just going through the configuration. Now in here, I've already configured that, right, for the sake of today, but if I wanted to add another outcome, I can do that very easily. We see another branch gets added, right? So maybe I need more information, need more details, right? I could do that, right? So now I have another one that's already all set up and ready to go. So now, right, I could start using things like a state machine as well, or a branch by stage, right? If you're familiar with a state machine inside a Nintex workflow and on-prem, same concept, where now I have repeatable branches of logic. Think about like your multi-level approvals, going back and forth, avoiding those bottlenecks, right? To be able to go back and forth in an approval process until you come to the proper conclusion, you can finally move forward, or it just terminates, right? Do things like that. So we can go pretty complex. For the sake of today, we'll keep it kind of simple. And we're just going to go ahead, we're going to get a task, assign it out to the right party, send them a notification, but maybe I want to issue some sort of reminders. I could set that up as well. Escalations, same thing. Couldn't tell you how many times we talk about, right, I have a task, but what happens if they don't respond? What happens if they're out of office? I need to give it to somebody else, right? I want to be able to assign it to a different user. Can do that as well, right? To be able to go off and do those things. So let's take a look at what the actual end user is going to come off and see. What they're going to get is something like this, right? So we see that he just issued that. So following submission is for myself, return to work on May 3rd, that first Monday. And then here's a form to go off and complete this. Again, it's a task. I can go ahead and I can say, well, here's a form to go off and complete this task. So let's grab that and it's on my other screen. Logging in. All right. So again, here's that form that we just went off and filled out. I recreated it on the task form, so that way there I have it. It's all read only, so I can't come in and edit it. But now I have my outcomes. I can approve or reject it, or I can approve it for a future date. Now, if I approve it for a future date, we see that, well, what's your new return date? Maybe I want it to, it's May 3rd. I got too many people coming back to the office on May 3rd. Actually, you're going to come back on May the 10th. Sure thing. We can do that. We can change that. Again, we can be as flexible as the business process needs to be. So now I'm going to go ahead and submit that. Task is complete. Let's go ahead and take a look at where we go from here. All right. Real quick, just because I forgot it, on the form itself for the task, the form design editor is the exact same as that start event form that I just showed. I don't want to spend too much time there, but all the same things are in there. The key difference is now I can actually pull data from the workflow and my start event because I'm now midstream in my process, right? I'm now inside of my workflow, so I can pull that data into it and actually showcase it right there on the form. So my users for the task actually have something to look at, right? They know what they're actually looking at. Everything's in context. All right. So now we've approved it. It's going to go off. We're going to format the date again. We're going to go ahead and do that because now we've selected a different date. So my actual return date, we're going to go ahead and format that. And I'm also now going to grab my file, right? Because now I'm going to move into some document generation, right? Because I want to make sure that both parties, both my manager and the employee, maybe HR, legal, whoever needs that sign off has that, right? So I'm going to go off and grab the template that we're going to use. I have it stored in OneDrive for me. Real simple. What it actually looks like is right over here. Get to that here in a second, but there it is. And now that I have it in a variable, just move on to my document generation action. Again, simple enough. What am I actually going to build with it? Well, I'm actually going to build a PDF. I have my template. It's a variable, and here's my output, right? I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to create the employee name, return to work. Very simple, right? And then I'm going to ultimately just store it back into OneDrive. Now, with document generation, you have the ability to inject any sort of data into your template. The way that we do that is through our document generation and this document tagger in here. So kind of looking these here side by side, let's go ahead and do this. Here's my template that I have. Here's from Nintex Workflow Cloud, right? All of my different variables. So these are user-defined variables, the things I'm doing inside of the workflow, as well as my start event variables, right? All that data that I collected on the form, right? So I can go off and grab that. And to do that, all I'm doing is clicking on it. I copy it off that tag, and then I just paste it where I need to. So you can see in here, this contract, this document, all I'm doing is pasting it, right? That's all I'm doing. Now that I've saved it into OneDrive, now my workflow actually has the capabilities to go off and get it, grab that data, and inject that data, that variable data during that runtime. Ultimately from here, right, I'm going to loop through this collection because there may be multiple files. That could be, you think about a contract, multiple pages, multiple documents, addendums, table of contents, all those things, right? So we can do multiple document generation actions if need be, right? So we store that in a collection. I'm just going to loop through that collection, grab my file out of it, and put it back into OneDrive in a specific location. Right. Now, what does that actually look like? Well, there it is actually. So came through. Nothing like keeping you on your toes in a live setting, by the way. So it's always good when things work. So here's my actual document. Here's my PDF. And here we go. So there's the date, just kind of looking at the bottom, actual return date, May 10th. We saw that I changed it in the task form. So we see that that works. It's human readable as well. It's not that ugly system timestamp that we get with all that. My manager, he went off and approved it. Don't worry, I actually approved it for him, so that way I don't have to bother him today. But more notes go here. That's what I put in that form initially. And then here's all my responses, right? My email address, my name, all that stuff, the building. And there's my date that I put in, that May 3rd. So that's what I put in inside of the form. But here's what actually got approved. So now from here, going back to the workflow, kind of have the world open to you, right? So that's the concept, right? That's the idea that we really want to drive home today is, where do we go from here, right? Is it the idea that, well, it actually needs to get stored into, SharePoint? Sure, we could do that, right? Maybe we need to send a message out to Microsoft Teams, right? Maybe we need to post to a channel. Okay, we could do that, right? Maybe the process changes where we actually need to sign off on it through some sort of e-signature. Maybe we need to put this into another system of record. By all means, you have that option, because the idea is let's be honest, probably last year, none of us probably thought that we were going to have to figure out some sort of vaccination or return to work policy, maybe a travel policy, all of those things. None of us thought about that, right? But now that's the reality of doing business. That's the reality of the way that we do work day in and day out, is things change. Right? Every day we are faced with, how do we be better than we were yesterday? The beauty with Nintex Workflow Cloud is it's a tool that's flexible enough to be able to change things as your business changes. As new things come up, the flexibility of the tool to be able to come in, make your changes, add things around, tweak things, hit that publish button, and you're off to the races. It doesn't take months to be able to build in automation. You can literally do this in an afternoon. So there's a lot of really cool things that we can do. But I'll hand it back to Steve and crew to kind of wrap up. Or if there's anything else, I don't know if there's any questions that came up during my time here today, but I'll pass it back to you guys.
Hey Jesse, thank you. Eric here with Orangutech. Just a quick question here from Philippe. When you make a connection to SharePoint Online or another Microsoft 365 workload, are those connections linked to the user account credential of the person who created the connection?
Correct. Yeah. So you make the connection, and whoever made the connection, it would be using those credentials. So this is where we get into conversations around things like service accounts or elevated accounts that the workflow would be leveraging, because it would be the two apps talking to each other. It's basically like an OAuth flow. So if you're familiar with that, it's the same concept through like the security token. So yeah, that's the exact approach. Yep.
Okay. Excellent. And just so everyone knows, this will be put on the Orangutech YouTube channel, so we can use this as a resource afterwards, as well as the workflow that we actually designed today will be uploaded to the Nintex gallery. So this will be a usable workflow by anyone who wants to download it, anyone who's looking at a return to office in the fall. This is a usable workflow that we will upload. So that's also a neat takeaway from today's seminar. Steve, is there anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, I mean, so you mentioned the process gallery that's on our website where you can find this one. There is a host of other use cases that you can download and install to a trial of Nintex Workflow Cloud. We've customers, partners, and internal staff have been posting stuff, particularly stuff that's kind of pandemic related. If it would be useful for other organizations, whether it be commercial or public sector, we've been posting that out there. So you can just go grab it. And particularly in Nintex Workflow Cloud, it's a really easy import. You just grab a token, you put it in, it pulls in your form, it pulls in the workflow, and then you're off and running, and then all you have to do is modify it. So it's a great resource. Alongside the gallery is also the Nintex community, which has been around for 10, 12 years. It's a whole community of people, citizen developers, professional developers that share ideas, thoughts, comments, tutorials. So it's another great resource if you're doing a trial and you want to get some insight on what other people are doing to solve maybe a problem that you have.
That's excellent. Thanks, Steve. Appreciate that. That's a great resource for anyone who's looking to use Nintex or currently using Nintex. Feel free to reach out to your Orangutech account executive for a Nintex Workflow Cloud trial. If you're not currently using Nintex, that's a great option. If you are using Nintex, there's a serious case for migration, I think, as well, with the Canadian data center coming in fall 2021. So please reach out to your account executive or myself. My email has been peppering your inbox over the last couple of weeks. So feel free to shoot me an email, and I can set you up with a Nintex Workflow Cloud trial as well. Again, that data center is coming fall 2021. And we're fortunate to be unlocking Nintex Workflow Cloud for the public sector. So I'd like to thank everyone for joining. And again, please reach out if you have any questions. We'd love to connect you with Nintex. Thanks, everyone.
Awesome. Thanks, Eric. Thanks, Jesse.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.
Bye, all.